All right, welcome once again to the Aftermath. And this is Mick, the Doctor of Digital, and also my legislative tiger, my co host, Kendra Ryan. How are you doing today, Kendra?
I'm great. How are you, Mick?
I'm doing fantastic. And today, can you believe who we have on the show today? Oh, my
I'm
goodness.
I know. I'm super excited for her, and I think she says it best to introduce herself because she has a long list of things she has done in her history,
Mm.
and she still looks beautiful and young.
Absolutely. So, Hope, thank you for being on the show today. So, I'll give you a little bit of background because you have got to listen to this episode. So, Hope has a background because she's a life coach. She's also struggled with infertility, cancer, and divorce. And if one of those things wasn't bad enough, she's done and beat them all. So, she is with us today. She's also hired a surrogate mother. Her children were babies. She had stage 3 colon cancer. She is now co-parenting with a narcissist. It's unbelievable, all the things in her background. So Hope, thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate your time. Welcome to the show.
Hi there. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Can you tell us just a little bit about your background? Because there is so much there. I mean, I'm also interested. You got a master's from the London School of Economics. There's just tons of things to talk about, but it's really interesting. Can you give us a little bit of your background from your own perspective? Would you appreciate that?
Yes, thank you. My name is Hope Firsel, and I received a psychology degree from the London School of Economics in my earliest 20s, a master's. And with that degree, I was able to study leadership development, training, and working with leaders on the human behavior within the workplace. After facing my own series of infertility, it took 5 years for us to have our babies, and the help of a surrogate mother who is an angel to us. I then was diagnosed with cancer. During those journeys, I went back to school and became a certified life coach. And I enjoy helping other parents, women who are struggling with some of these health issues like infertility and cancer. And now, having just about a year and a half out of a divorce after 18 years of marriage, I'm able to also help on the divorce end. I am co parenting with my ex husband, and I'm able to speak on how that is going, as well as my experiences from coaching so many different women who have so many different types of family structures following a divorce.
With so much in your background, I mean, I just got to ask you out of curiosity, if nothing else, what, because there are some really horrible, traumatic things in your experience. What would be the worst of the things that you would say out of all those? Most people only deal with one thing, but what would be probably the worst in your opinion?
You know, it's interesting. All three experiences touch such different aspects of the human core. I think longing for a baby and spending years and years every month waiting, that was heart wrenching. When you're in the face of cancer and life and death, you really became focused on the mind when it's all you can control, often when you're laying in a hospital bed or at your own home from the chemotherapy. So I would say that was the time where I did a lot of healing, and I realized that we only have one life to live. And when you face death, you come out a new person. And I'm assuming that had some of the pieces that started to break apart my marriage of 18 years. And going through the divorce, well, now that was a third heartbreak. That was for me a mourning period, mourning the loss of being a wife, of having the home of a family of four. So they all hold different pieces that are all as tremendously painful as the other. I co-parenting now, it's hard. It's still hard when my babies aren't with me. Oh, they're 12 and 14, but when they're not with me on holidays or weekends or, Monday and Tuesday nights for me, that's still a heartbreak. But I'm here healing. I work with my own therapist, my own coach, and then the privilege of coaching so many women allows me to help in my own healing, listening to their stories, holding their hands. Oftentimes, I'm working with women who are in the midst of determining if ending their marriage is even an option that they're emotionally ready to take. I have quite a few clients that I'm working with on that. And then I'm working with a lot of clients on how to co-parent, and co-parenting with someone that you had a love relationship and then ends is very difficult, because when you're co-parenting, you get into really a business relationship that has a lot to do with calendars and dealing with tasks and responsibilities and finances, and doing that with someone that you've just had your worst heartbreak ever. It's a very strenuous process, and I would say that you have to be really mentally able to face your own demons, where your own weaknesses may have contributed to the breakdown, and begin to see the other person as they are and have realistic expectations.
Oh man, you said so many things there, and usually I'm the person taking notes. I don't even have my notebook yet. But I think I like how you say, even though you're helping people and you are coaching them, you are also getting your self-help as you're going through that. And I think that's so important, because you have to be able to separate that. And I think that takes a very strong person to listen to everybody else's problems and try to solve their problems while you have your life going on. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I would say that I wouldn't be here today, as you had said, thank you, that I look healthy and young, if I had not taken care of my mind and my spirit throughout the infertility, cancer, and divorce. And today, managing as a single woman, something I had never envisioned, raising two teenage boys. I think it is critical for people to have an outlet, a resource, somebody that's not invested in the process personally, that can help you see the light through the trees, can remind you of your own strengths, can help you to shine the light on where gratitude can be found. And I certainly love that honor with all of my clients, is helping them to know that there's a little hope by looking through my experiences, and making sure we all stay mindful and that we take care of our inner self, our inner child.
Some of the things that we've come across, and we've spoken to experts before about when you get involved with someone, when should that therapeutic process start? In other words, to look for that third person. Would you recommend that this is early on in the process, wait till issues arise, or when there's serious difficulties? Where do you think is an appropriate time to reach out to someone to help?
Well, having studied psychology since I was 18, I would always suggest using an expert where you can, as early as possible. And I still believe in that. And my ex and I, we had therapy to decide and work through the marriage at the very end and see where we were going to take it. And today, I still believe in my children having that outlet as well, and myself, as early as you can, because the human mind is an incredible machine. And if we don't know how to use it, and we're going through trauma and darkness, we can really find a place of depression, isolation, and you cannot help yourself. So when you're going through these times, when you're seeking medical care, perhaps, or the help of a lawyer, you need to be strong. You need to be your own advocate. You have to be clear on what is your intentions and where are you headed. And I believe that's where a life coach can really come into play, helping you be your own advocate, make the best impression you can, so that you can be clear and consistent with what's going to work for you. I find a lot of clients are in this very sensitive spot where their body isn't regulated properly, and they're yelling or screaming or avoiding altogether. And all of that will often lead to the individual coming from a place of weakness, not able to really vocalize in a powerful manner who they are and where their power is.
So that was actually one of the questions I was going to ask, if you could define life coach versus therapist, because that's something I struggled with when I first separated, and what was best for me. And we've had discussions before, Mick and I, with other guests, that therapy, you have to find the right therapist. But I also believe you have to find the right life coach. So it was very interesting on how you defined it. I just caught the very end of it, but a life coach is teaching you how to be an advocate and building and strong. And I saw a life coach as somebody that's forward thinking. A therapist is kind of helping me deal with the past.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's right or if you have thoughts on that.
No, yeah, that echoes what I say, which I often use the example if you if you have a broken knee, let's say, you need to go see a surgeon and you need to possibly remove something, go in and do a physical deep dive. Once you're ready to hit the gym or go to physical therapy or even walk out of the car to the gym, that's the time that a coach can help you become accountable for what is it that you need today, in this moment, in the next day, in the next week. Ideally, I work with my clients once a week for 2 to 3 months at a minimum. And that's a way that we can work a bit on the past where those same stories are coming up for us, those same challenges. But we're, like you say, we're healthy and we're ready to get healthier. We're ready to become stronger. And a coach can help you with that discipline and that tenacity.
I love all those words.
Well, you know them well.
Yes, I do. Can you tell us, where are you located, Hope, and where are you servicing clients out of? Where all do you?
Yes.
Because now we're all virtual, right? So that's a thing now. We're everywhere,
It's a
which is
beautiful
great.
thing.
It
Yeah.
is.
Well, I do work via Zoom with women. I only work with women at this time going through the unexpected. And I work with women around the globe. I also do see people in person because I still really do love that one-on-one. So for women that are in the Chicagoland area, I have an office in Highland Park outside the city, and then also within the Chicago area at a women's center called Alter, where I have my own private office.
Wonderful.
So whatever works best.
And I had a question then about narcissism, because we've had experts on, and I'm wondering if you could first of all define it. So it's a two-part question that define what a narcissist is and your understanding, and then how do you co-parent and get along with this person when this complexity of children arrives? So it's kind of a two-part. What is it, and could you define it? And then how do you deal with it, particularly in regards to trying to parent with a person of this background?
Well, it's not my deep expertise. I have been listening and studying. I have quite a few clients right now who are separating from strong individuals who have an ability to manipulate, perhaps, an ability to maybe tear them down to make them more vulnerable. And what I've learned is, well, we can't label people per se as a narcissist. We can talk about a narcissistic tendency, and that people that have this tendency, this word that may be used, there's other words that we can use. Oftentimes it may be stubborn, angry, manipulative, controlling, and we don't necessarily need to be hung up on the definition per se, but more of the characteristics that an individual with those type of, shall we say, skills make it challenging. And the important part of that is learning how to be calm, to know where you sit, know your position, and to speak clearly. I've also learned it's very important for my clients to do a lot of listening and not engage. It's important in all of our experiences in life to know that we are only responsible for our actions, and to be able to observe others in their own transformation and try to put a shell around our own selves to not get into any kind of dialogue or interactions or communications that may take you, the woman, the individual, off their path. And it's a challenge. It's difficult working with strong personalities. Oftentimes, though, it is the exact lesson that those individuals need to rediscover their own power and their own strength, and to discover that their empathy perhaps can sometimes be detrimental. So to be cautious and careful. There's life lessons from all of it on helping women and children navigate through that is something I enjoy very much.
Yeah, I appreciate the definition because I look at the definition. Hopefully, I'm kind of aware because I look at those things like a grandiose sense of self. Well, in some ways, I have a grandiose sense of myself. So I'm thinking, am I a narcissist or what have you? But I think it's a number of things, and I don't fit all the criteria. So I would say I'm not. But I think it's important to kind of understand some of the key elements and to be self aware. I think that's what's really helpful about the definition.
Yeah, self-aware. I mean, as human beings, we are all narcissistic in some degree because we live within our own mind, right? And our own inner self, and the way we perceive the world is going to have a lens based on what we've experienced and what may be important to us at the moment. But the way we communicate our needs and process our needs, that's when I do believe a life coach and a therapist can certainly help.
Tell us maybe from your own personal experience, or you can use clients that you've worked with. What is the biggest lesson learned when coming out of a divorce?
For me personally, what I took away was that no one's coming to save me, that I can do this on my own, this life, this beautiful, precious life that I've been given. Um, it's up to me as an adult and a woman and a strong one is to know that I can survive and take care of myself and my children on my own. And I think that's a beautiful life lesson. I had entered the marriage at 25, really looking for someone to complete me and to help me and to pick up the slack where I maybe didn't have the skill sets. And now I look back and know that for other young women, I would not recommend that. I would recommend working on your own self and your own development rather than putting those pressures or burdens onto somebody else. We all need to be self-sufficient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And where we might lack in certain things or where we might not be able to do certain things. And I'm thinking basics, right? Like changing a light bulb, working on the cars, whatever, right? We raise our hand and we say, hey, can't do that. Need some help here.
Yeah, that's where it starts. And learning that you're going to be able to find help from neighbors, from friends. There's a lot of different options on the internet now with, the neighborhood apps and such. So, you can get yourself pretty worked up over what people may say are little things. But when I was living in the dark, not able to change light bulbs, it wasn't so little. But you learn and you persevere, and it's all part of life and the lessons we learn.
Yes, very true. Very true.
Can you talk a little bit about the co-parenting angle? Because I think that's helpful for a lot of people, and it's very difficult. The way I look at it, it's like, well, in any relationship, there's complexity, but it's even more difficult when you're co-parenting with someone else and you're physically separate, and the children sometimes are separate as well and coming back and forth. So could you talk a little bit about some of the difficulties and maybe the hints and tips to do co-parenting well or improve in that regard?
Yes. Well, as I talk about this, I look at both of you, and I have a heavy heart because I know that, well, I might complain of the going back and forth. I know this is a luxury after listening to both of your stories and what you're fighting for. In the same breath, co-parenting and having your children move from home to home is definitely a difficult task, trying to raise them in the midst of all that chaos. What I learned was at first I really thought it would be this co-parenting in this world where we would, be mingled. And I'm learning that that's very complicated. And if you're mingled so well, then I wonder where the breakdown was. For me, I think we really needed some time to parallel parent so that we each get our own homes solid and confident and running in their own structures, their own universes, as long as the value systems and their activities and such can stay the same. It's important right now that we're all establishing our own families and our own units. So knowing the difference between parallel parenting, which is when you're side by side, but you're not interjected as I think I had initially dreamt it might be. Perhaps very unrealistic of me.
No, I think we all learned that. And actually, when you said that, I wrote it down because I'm like, oh, that's right. I did learn that a couple of years ago, and that term and what that looks like, and I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the kids can have separate rules at the houses, but they also need to respect the other parent and their rules, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I would say me and my ex have done a really good job of keeping hostile conversations or moments of complexity away from the children as best we can. And that's the beauty of email and text and Zoom. We're able to do that outside of the home and not in front of them. And when you parallel parent, if you can't be together at the same dinner table for a holiday, perhaps to honor each other's own respectful holidays and own customs in each home, and do your best to show the children that you support them and you want them to always be respectful. And all the data shows if a child can have both parents in their lives, and if those parents aren't having strong conflict in front of the children, that's the best opportunities for success for those children. And it is harder said than done, no problem. Yeah.
It is. And I remember when I first had the children with me and we had just separated, my youngest was really upset because he wanted to spend some of his birthday with his dad, but it was technically my time, right?
Yes.
By custody and different things. So it was my time that day. Well, but if you put the best interest of the children first,
Yes.
right, and what they wanted to do, to me, that was parallel parenting, because then I called his dad and I said, hey, would you like to spend, this time with them? And then I'll pick them up and we can have, the party that I still had planned. It worked out great. And I think in the end, my son was happier doing it that way rather than feeling like he missed out on his birthday with one parent over another. But again, sometimes that comes back to bite you. So I did write down the empathy and and trying to, because his dad did not reciprocate that.
Right. You definitely learn that you have to operate out of what works for you. Mm-hmm. And not everyone's going to see the reciprocation in the same token or the same manner. And if you're divorced, most likely you're not gonna. It's the things that were wrong during the relationship and the marriage, those don't go away. Those don't disappear. So you most likely, even more so now, are sticking to what works for you. And that's most likely has conflict with the other. Mm-hmm. Keeping the child in mind is always what's best. Mm-hmm. But that's when a life coach and a therapist and a friend or a support group. I know that some of these services are expensive and insurance doesn't often pay. So finding resources with other parents, other community members that are going through the same thing is critical.
Yes.
You need outlets so that when you are in those moments of communication, you can be as strong and as stable as possible.
Yes.
I had a question there when being a life coach, and this question or this idea of finding a superpower or finding the skills and talents and abilities that people have. Could you talk a little bit about that? I mean, when you're dealing mostly with women, I think all women have superpowers anyway. I'm amazed by women in general, but could you talk a little bit about that process and how you help people find that for themselves and probably recognize things that maybe you can pull out of them or show them that they are not distinctly aware of?
Yeah. Well, I fully believe all human beings have superpowers. It's a miracle that we're breathing, standing, and talking. what's going on within each body, it's absolutely astounding. So I really doesn't take a lot for me to convince others of their gifts. I see it with every human being, and I think that comes from spending a lot of time in the cancer arm of various hospitals around the world to be here today. Oftentimes it takes women, my clients, a few minutes to unload. So first, what I often do, will have them do an emotional dump, maybe on a piece of paper, perhaps just out loud, but really just to get rid of all the to-dos and the tasks and the things that are in their mind so that they can then get focused. I then typically will do some mindfulness activity depending on what speaks to them. And then we'll ask questions, empowerment questions about who they are, what makes them come to life, alive, what makes them feel in flow with the universe. And I'm able to draw out their unique, precious gifts. And then we create plans for how are we going to use those gifts, those strengths as they move forward, and perhaps the infertility, cancer, divorce, or co-parenting trauma of their life. Who are they going to be? How are they going to show up? I tell my clients, it's as if you're getting dressed in the morning. You have the opportunity to pick out what you're going to wear. Will it keep you warm? Will it look appropriate? Is it professional or is it casual? You have all these decisions about who you want to be as you present yourself. And the human mind is the same way. We can, with mindfulness and with the interest in our own self, we're able to determine who we want to be in the face of anything.
I think that's so true. And Hope, you are a miracle in and of itself. And as far as redefining yourself after a traumatic event, you are a shining example of that. And
well, thank
how
you.
you just kept pursuing and moving forward. So I commend you for that.
Well, thank you. I look at a hero myself. So thank you for being a full inspiration and a warrior for all of us.
Yeah. How do you, since you're working with women, and this is going to be just a very pointed question, I guess I should say, and direct. I'm sure a lot of people come in with a lot of anger, and it probably is towards the men in their life because of what has happened after a divorce, right? How do you coach them around that? And I think it goes to redefining yourself and looking inward, right? But maybe some of the tips they can use, because I think sometimes, at least I was very aggressive and upset, and it wasn't my choice for the divorce. Let's just put it that way. And so I think coaching someone, and it truly helped me. I had a life coach as well, and I also had a therapist. So I think it helped me to look inside. But how do you help women transfer that anger into something more positive?
It's interesting because it's anger or sadness that I'm typically dealing with. And me personally, I have a strength going towards sadness. It's actually difficult for me personally to tap my anger. So everybody's different, but it's definitely very strong feelings. And they're, as you mentioned, coming out of a divorce, typically those feelings are resonated and taken out on the partner. The important thing is that I help the women understand that the anger typically is at ourselves. It's typically for allowing ourselves to perhaps be vulnerable, allowing ourselves to be subjected to perhaps a relationship that you look back on and have regret that you allowed yourself to be in that type of relation. Oftentimes there's regret. And so we have to work through those emotions individually, and we cannot use our ex-partners as a place to target all of that. You're just going to keep finding the same men again and again, or the same solutions. So it's important that we go back to find out who was that woman that entered that relationship, and where were the wounds that you were trying to heal, And how can we heal them today with a plan that is suitable and effective for living their full and best life? I recommend a lot with my clients some meditation, journaling, exercise, art, music. We talk about what speaks to them and where are they going to find peace so that we can let go of those toxic feelings and energy and find ones that are going to be more acceptable and allow us to become stronger, not weaker.
That's really good. I love all this. I'm going to have to go back and listen to the recording. Mick usually does. I'm going to have to because I can't listen intensely and write all that down.
Very I'm good glad point. You're enjoying it.
Yes. How do you help your children through a divorce, or coach women to help their children through a divorce?
Yeah, really good question. It's a very big part of my coaching. Women who, in particular, are debating if they think a divorce is appropriate, dealing with the children is first and foremost. They say women that, or men, I think the data shows it takes a few years, up to 5 years oftentimes, to pull the trigger. So these contemplations, these discussions go on oftentimes months or years. In my experience with conscious parenting, I always believe in honesty, but I do think that it takes someone who's centered, someone that's done the work, that can then share it with others, in particular their family and their children, in a place that will meet that child where they are. So it's oftentimes talking about what wasn't working and bringing their children to that attention, and how two homes now, what is that going to provide? What are we going to eliminate? Perhaps screaming, fighting, perhaps the unknown of what the relationship's going to look like that day. Perhaps one of the parents is not coping and not surviving, and it's time to let the child see that we will always love you and can do that better, perhaps in our own space, in our own home, because perhaps that relationship is no longer serving both parents. And I will say it takes years, and it takes years. My children were in 4th and 5th grade, and they're still processing it. And they're in 7th and 8th now, asking me questions about the night of, what followed. And I assume that may go on for their lifetime, as you try to have recollection of important things that happened to you in your childhood. The best that I'm doing, and my co-parent, their dad, is to, again, just be honest, to remind them of what we love, the memories we cherish, and trying to show them a supportive relationship and a friendship moving forward as best we can.
I just had one other quick question, unless Kendra had something else too. Since they're healing and after trauma can take years, is there a minimum that you might say before you should get involved with someone else? Or is there a way to avoid that rushing moment of saying, I've got to find somebody right away?
It's a good question. It's not my expertise per se. So I don't know if I can speak to it. I think that everybody should take time for healing after any kind of breakup, and look at what wounds and what learnings came from that, and how you want to change based on that. Although I do know that sometimes you can form friendships with the opposite sex who are going through similar things and be a support system for one another. So I don't want to say it's never appropriate or never a good idea, but in my own experience and with my clients, I always suggest a good few months at least. For me, it was a year of really mourning before I could even contemplate that. Everybody's different. The important thing is that when you are ready to get into a new relationship, that you're whole and you're confident. And what my therapist says to me is, you don't want to throw the bath out with the bathwater. So what may have come from a divorce, there's a lot of learnings from that relationship about myself, and a lot of things that went on in the relationship that I can learn from, opportunities for me for growth in the midst of all of that chaos. And that takes a really strong person in the midst of all that to say, where do I have ownership and where can I improve? And I believe that is the journey of being a human being.
That's really good. So Hope, if somebody wants to reach out to you to be their life coach, how do they get a hold of you?
I am hopefirsel.com, or hope@hopefirsel.com is my email. You can also find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, or Facebook. And I see women one-on-one via Zoom or in the Chicagoland area as they're going through trauma.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your personal story and some tips from your professional career. I think it's been very valuable for our listeners.
Oh, I appreciate it. And thank you for sharing your story.
Yes.
Thanks,
We can
Hope.
all learn from each other.
Yes, we can.
We
Have a
appreciate
wonderful night.
Oh, thanks, you too. And if you've enjoyed this Aftermath, make sure that you subscribe, like, share, and positively review us on Apple Podcasts, because we are trying to bring you the best shows that we can, the best experts to help out everyone. Until next time, take care. Deus Vult.